Martha was already in the hospital bed when the village gathered outside, whispering her name like a curse and a miracle at once. No one could understand how a 62-year-old woman had come to carry life again, and even less how the father was the quiet 18-year-old boy who once brought her water and chopped her firewood. As the doctors rushed around her, Martha held one thought. If I don't survive, they will take everything from him. And outside, Charles stood trembling, ready to fight the entire world for the family no one believed could exist. Martha lived at the far edge of the village, where the gravel road slowly disappeared into the forest. Her house stood by itself, worn down by time, but still holding together out of stubbornness. The roof had been repaired so many times that no one remembered how it originally looked. The walls leaned slightly, as if the years had pressed on them too hard. Yet the place still felt alive. It breathed with the smell of dried herbs, pine smoke, and memories that refused to fade. Most villagers rarely came this far. They preferred the center, where houses stood closer and life felt warmer. Out here, silence ruled. Birds nested in the tall pines. The wind sang through the grass. Nights were darker and mornings colder. Martha grew used to it long ago. She had lived here through storms, through losses, through seasons that tested her strength in every possible way. Her husband had died years earlier. He had been a quiet man with gentle hands and a calm voice. When he passed, the house grew heavier, as if grief soaked into the beams. Her children moved to the city soon after. They visited rarely. They always had reasons. Work, school, responsibilities, distance. She told herself she understood. She did not want to be a burden, even though loneliness clung to her shoulders like a heavy shawl. Martha was 62 now. Her joints ached in the mornings. Her breath shortened when she carried heavy buckets of water. But she refused to stop working. She chopped her own wood. She tended a small garden behind the house. She repaired her clothes by candlelight. She walked to the village well every day, no matter the weather. She did all of it with a quiet determination that kept her going. Life stayed the same for years. Routine, silence, the same faces passing by, the same shadows moving across the fields. Nothing ever changed in this village. Time seemed to avoid it, as if the place existed outside the world. But that summer, time finally decided to intervene. He arrived on a warm afternoon. A young boy, barely a man. 18, tall, but not yet grown into his height. His shoulders were narrow, and his step uncertain, as if he had not yet learned how to carry his own weight in the world. His name was Charles. He came with a small backpack and a letter from the regional center. The letter explained that he had been assigned here for seasonal work. The youth program sent boys like him to small villages to help with heavy chores. Most were placed with families who needed assistance, especially the elderly. Martha only learned she was on the list when Charles showed up at her door. He greeted her politely. His voice was soft. His eyes felt too old for his age. She saw something fragile in him, something that made her pause. She had expected a troublemaker or a lazy boy, but he stood there quietly, waiting for her to speak first. She offered him water. He thanked her as if she had given him much more than that. Then he explained that the council had instructed him to help her through the summer. Martha tried to refuse at first. She had taken care of herself for years. She did not want anyone to pity her. But the boy insisted. He said the assignment was not optional, and she realized that maybe it was not pity. Maybe he simply needed a place to be. Charles began helping the very next morning. He carried 2 heavy buckets from the well and set them down by her door without a word. She noticed how carefully he handled everything, how he tried not to spill a drop. When she thanked him, he smiled shyly and walked away. He spent the rest of the day splitting firewood behind her house. The axe was too heavy for him, but he kept swinging until his arms trembled. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His hands turned red and raw. Martha told him to rest, but he just nodded and swung again. Something inside him needed this work. It was not just a task. It was an escape. At sunset, she brought him tea. He sat on an old stump, exhausted but calm. She watched him for a moment before speaking. He reminded her of someone she once knew. Someone young and lost. someone who had needed kindness more than anything. Charles thanked her again and again. His gratitude felt too large for such a small gesture. She sensed that he did not receive kindness often. There was a heaviness around him, a shadow that followed him like a second skin. Over the next days, he repaired the fence. He cleaned the roof gutters. He cut new paths through the overgrown grass. He worked quietly, always focused, as if work itself helped him breathe. Martha began cooking more than usual. She told herself it was because the boy needed strength, but she also realized she enjoyed having someone at her table again, even if he barely spoke, even if they simply ate in silence. But silence between them never felt empty. Sometimes he would glance at her with a look she could not explain. Not admiration, not confusion, something deeper, something searching for a place to belong. One evening, heavy clouds gathered above the hills. A storm was forming. The air thickened, and the world grew still. Martha was lighting candles when Charles knocked on her door. His shirt was soaked from the rain that had already begun to fall. He said he had checked the shed because he thought the roof might leak. Then he stood there, waiting for her to react, as if he expected her to scold him for caring too much. She invited him inside. They sat at the table. Rain hammered against the windows. The candles flickered. Lightning flashed behind the curtains. For the first time, Charles spoke about himself. He told her he had grown up in an institution. He never knew his parents. He never had a real home. The youth program was his first chance to see the world outside the walls of the orphanage. But he did not feel welcomed anywhere. People saw him as a responsibility, not a person. Martha listened without interrupting. She saw the pain in his voice. Not dramatic pain, quiet pain, the kind that settled deep in the bones and stayed for years. She told him about her husband, about the long winters, about the loneliness she rarely admitted aloud. She told him how the house felt too quiet now, how sometimes she forgot what it was like to hear another person's footsteps inside. The storm raged outside, but inside the room, something gentle formed. A connection, a shared understanding. When the storm finally ended, the village looked different. Branches covered the road. The sky was washed clean. The air felt lighter. Something had shifted inside Martha as well. She could not name it yet. She only knew that when Charles stepped outside to walk back to his assigned lodging, the house felt colder again. The villagers noticed change too. They saw Charles walking to Martha's house every morning. They saw him carrying wood, fixing doors, cleaning the yard. They whispered. They speculated. They filled the silence with their own narratives. In a place where nothing ever happened, even the smallest movement became a storm. Why is he always there? She's too old for this. The boy should help someone else. There must be something strange going on. Martha ignored the whispers at first. She had lived long enough to understand that people in small places needed something to talk about. It gave them meaning, even if the meaning was borrowed from someone else's life. Charles ignored the whispers too, or perhaps he never noticed them. He kept working. He kept showing up. He kept caring in the simplest, purest ways. He fixed a broken window without being asked. He organized her firewood stack. He washed her old curtains and hung them back with careful hands. All of it made the house feel younger. Or maybe it made her feel younger. Days turned into weeks. Martha began to rely on his presence. Not because she needed physical help, but because she had forgotten what it felt like not to be alone. His footsteps on the path, his quiet voice, his steady hands, they became part of her days. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the forest, Charles carried a basket of vegetables from her garden to the kitchen. He placed it on the table, paused, and looked at her for a long moment. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, something she had not felt in decades. Not desire, not infatuation, something deeper, a recognition, as if two souls, both tired, had finally found a place where breathing became easier. She did not speak. He did not speak. The moment passed quietly, like a soft breeze moving through an open window, but stayed inside both of them. And the village, though unaware of the quiet bond forming at the edge of its borders, would soon be shaken by consequences none of them could imagine. Because some connections begin in silence, and some miracles begin long, before anyone realizes they are happening. The summer deepened slowly, as if the days stretched themselves across the sky to stay warm a little longer. In the village, life moved at its usual slow pace. People tended their gardens. Old men played cards outside the store. Women carried bread from the bakery and paused to exchange the latest gossip. But whenever their eyes followed Charles walking toward Martha's house, their voices grew sharper. He noticed the looks, but he did not understand them. Martha noticed them too, but chose silence. She had lived long enough to know that people spoke not because they cared, but because they were bored. Still, the whispers felt heavier each day, like a distant storm approaching. Inside Martha's home, the atmosphere was different. The house felt warmer, lighter. It was strange how much a single pair of hands could change a whole place. Charles opened the windows in the mornings. He swept the floors. He fixed the loose hinges that had creaked for years. Small things done quietly, without expectation. His presence filled the emptiness between the walls. One afternoon, Martha returned from the well carrying a half-filled bucket. Her breath was short. Her arms trembled. She had underestimated her strength. When she reached her gate, Charles appeared out of nowhere and took the bucket from her hands without asking. "You should let me handle this," he said in his gentle, steady voice. Martha wanted to protest, but the words stayed inside her. She watched him carry the bucket with ease. His steps were sure, his posture straight. In that moment, she felt both grateful and vulnerable. He placed the bucket on the wooden bench by her door. Then he turned to her. "You shouldn't push yourself," he said. "I've pushed myself my whole life," she replied. He nodded, but the concern in his eyes did not fade. They spent the rest of the afternoon sorting herbs in the kitchen. The warm smell of thyme and mint filled the room. Martha sat on a stool and tied small bundles with twine. Charles passed them to her after plucking the leaves from the stems. They worked slowly, calmly, without hurry. The silence between them never felt uncomfortable. It felt like a language of its own. As evening arrived, Martha poured tea into two mismatched cups. Charles sat across from her, hands wrapped around the warm porcelain. The room glowed with the soft orange light of sunset. Dust floated through the air like faint sparkles. He spoke first. "Do you ever get lonely?" Martha looked at him for a long moment. The question felt too honest, too raw. Most people asked about her health, her chores, her house. No one ever asked her about loneliness. "I used to," she said. "Then I stopped thinking about it. I suppose that was my way of surviving." He lowered his eyes. "I'm always lonely," he said, "even when I'm with people." Martha's heart tightened. She recognized that kind of loneliness, the kind that settled deep, so deep that even noise could not reach it. She didn't respond right away. She let the moment breathe. "Being alone is not the same as being empty," she said finally. He lifted his gaze. She met it without hesitation. Something quiet passed between them. Days continued with new gentle routines. Charles began arriving earlier than before, sometimes before sunrise. He swept the yard. He filled the water barrels. He checked the chickens for fox tracks. Martha found herself waking up and listening for his footsteps before she even got out of bed. She tried to tell herself she simply appreciated the help. But deep inside, she knew it was more than that. His presence softened the house. His voice eased the long silence. His small gestures reminded her of something she had forgotten: companionship. One morning, he brought her freshly picked berries in a wooden bowl. She smiled and thanked him. He blushed as if he had done something grand. "Where did you get these?" she asked. "I walked to the edge of the forest," he said. "I know you like them." She paused. She had never told him that. "How do you know what I like?" she asked. He shrugged lightly. "I pay attention." She felt a warm shift inside her, a softness she had not felt in years, a warmth that frightened her more than she expected. Later that afternoon, as she washed the berries, she caught herself smiling for no reason. She tried to stop, but the smile kept returning. It felt strange, almost foreign, but welcome. The village, however, did not see it the same way. A woman named Greta, known for her sharp tongue, commented loudly near the well. "That boy spends too much time at Martha's house." It's not proper. Another woman agreed. He should be helping a younger family, not sitting with her all day. Someone else added, it isn't natural. He's only a child. Martha heard them from a distance. She pretended not to, but the words dug under her skin like small thorns. Charles seemed unaware, or perhaps he pretended to be. He returned to his tasks with the same calm focus. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun disappear behind the hills, Martha finally spoke. You don't have to come every day, she said. People are talking. Charles frowned. What are they talking about? You know, she said softly. He looked at her with confusion. And something else. Something hurt. I don't care what they say, he replied. You should, she said. For your sake. He shook his head. Eve never had a place where I felt wanted, he said. Until now. The words struck her like a quiet blow. She turned away, looking at the line of trees in the distance. The world felt too still. Martha, he said with a calm, steady voice. I'm not here because they told me to. I'm here because I want to be. She closed her eyes for a moment. His words warmed her and frightened her at the same time. The nights grew warmer. Fireflies appeared in the field behind the house. Charles often stayed until the last light disappeared. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they did not. But the silence between them changed. It grew heavier, fuller, as if the air itself knew something they did not say aloud. One night, Martha cooked a vegetable stew. Charles thanked her again, as he always did. They ate in slow, comfortable quiet. When they finished, he helped her wash the dishes. Their hands brushed, only for a second, but the contact lingered. It felt like a spark hidden in water. Neither of them spoke about it. The next morning, Martha found a freshly carved wooden spoon on her doorstep. Smooth, perfectly shaped, a small rose etched into the handle. She picked it up and felt her breath catch. Charles stepped out from behind the house. I made it for you, he said. The words landed softly, deliberately. Why? She asked. He hesitated, then spoke. Because I wanted to give you something that lasts. She looked at him, and for the first time she saw him not as a boy assigned to help her, but as a soul that had wandered too long without a home. He waited for her reaction. She didn't know what to say. She simply held the spoon close to her chest and nodded. His shoulders relaxed. That day, whispers in the village grew louder. People saw the two walking together toward the market. They saw their easy pace, their quiet closeness. The rumors spread like fire in dry grass. But neither Martha nor Charles discussed it. In the afternoon, a storm rolled in. Heavy clouds swallowed the sky. Martha hurried to bring in the laundry. Charles ran to secure the tools in the shed. Thunder cracked across the hills. The wind picked up. Leaves swirled in chaotic spirals across the yard. When the rain began, it came fast and violent. The house shook. Water pounded against the windows. Martha felt a chill. Memories of past storms washed over her. She lit candles. But when she reached for the third one, the door burst open. Charles stood there, soaked from the rain, breathing hard. I came to check the roof, he said. You'll get sick, she replied. He stepped inside, water dripping from his clothes. I'm fine, he said. I just want to make sure you were safe. The house felt smaller with him inside. The storm roared outside like an angry beast. Charles moved closer to the table. His hair clung to his forehead. His shirt stuck to his skin. Martha felt a strange tension forming in the space between them. You didn't need to come, she said. I know, he replied, but I couldn't stay away. Thunder shook the house. She reached out without thinking and touched his arm. His skin was cold and trembling. He did not pull away. Instead, he looked at her with a calm, steady gaze that carried no confusion, only sincerity. In that moment, something changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, quietly, like the first crack of sunlight after a long winter. The storm continued, but the fear inside Martha faded. Charles sat across from her at the table. They drank tea in silence. Candlelight warmed their faces. The world outside raged, but inside, calm settled between them. Hours passed. When the storm finally weakened, the air smelled of wet earth and pine. Charles stood to leave. Martha walked him to the door. He paused before stepping out. "Are you afraid of what people say?" he asked. Her voice was soft. "Yes," she admitted, "but not for myself." He understood. He always understood. "I'm not afraid," he said. "Not of them. Not of anything." He stepped into the wet night and walked away. Martha watched him disappear down the road, each step echoing through her chest. The house felt heavier when he was gone. He had become part of the air itself, and she could feel the absence like a draft through the walls. She closed the door. The candlelight flickered. Her hands shook slightly. She realized that something irreversible had begun, something she could not name yet, something that the village would never understand, and something that would soon change everything. The storm passed, but its echo lingered in the village long after the clouds drifted away. Branches lay scattered across the road. Leaves clung to fences and windows. The air felt cleaner, sharper, but the peace did not last. Storms inside people tended to last longer than storms in the sky. By morning, gossip had already begun. Someone saw Charles leaving Martha's house late. Someone else saw candlelight in her window during the worst of the rain. Someone repeated it louder at the store. Someone added their own twist. And by noon, the whole village knew a story that none of them had witnessed. Martha heard it when she went to the market for flour. Two women stood near the apples, whispering with tight lips. "He was there again last night," one said. "Of course he was. Did you expect anything else?" The other replied. They fell silent when Martha approached, but their eyes followed her like sharp needles. She kept her back straight. She paid for her flour. She walked home without looking at anyone. Her steps were slow, careful. The dirt path felt heavier than usual. She sensed the judgment around her like a cold breeze. Back at the house, Charles was stacking wood. He greeted her with his usual shy smile. She tried to return it, but the weight of the whispers still rested on her shoulders. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Just the usual talk." He nodded. He did not press further. But later, as they sat sorting vegetables, he finally spoke. "You don't have to deal with this alone." She looked at him. His eyes were steady, serious. "I've dealt with people my whole life," she said. "This is nothing new." He shook his head. "But it's unfair." "Life often is," she replied. He went quiet, but the tension stayed in the room like a slow-burning candle. That evening, the sky turned a soft orange. Charles worked on repairing the wooden railing by the porch. Martha prepared dinner. She moved slowly, lost in thought. When she brought him a plate of stew, he took it gratefully. "Thank you," he said. "You should take a break," she replied. "I like working," he said. "It clears my head." She sat beside him. They ate in silence as the sun dipped behind the hills. The world felt calm. But inside Martha's chest, unease grew. "Charles," she said softly, "do you understand what people are saying?" "Yes," he said. "I'm not stupid. I never said you were." He looked at her, his expression firm. "I know what they think, and I don't care." "You should," she said. "For your future, for your place in this world." "My place?" he repeated. Eve never had one. The words hit hard. Martha inhaled slowly. "You have one here," she said. He froze, as if her words carried more meaning than she intended. Something softened in his face. Something deep and fragile. "But that is why people talk," she added. "They don't understand this. They don't understand you. Or me." He put his bowl down. "I don't care if they understand," he said. "I only care that you understand." Her throat tightened. She did not know how to respond. She stood up and walked to the railing, pretending to check his work. He joined her after a moment. They stood side by side, watching the last stripe of light disappear behind the trees. The silence between them felt different, heavier, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. The next morning, the village tension grew. People watched Charles walk to Martha's house with a bucket. They saw how he moved with purpose, how he did not avoid her gaze, how he entered her gate with familiarity. They whispered again. He helped her fix the crooked shelves in the kitchen. He dusted the high corners where she could not reach. He carried water twice, 3 times, 4 times. His energy seemed endless today, as if he wanted to prove something to the world. At midday, Martha asked him to rest. "You're pushing yourself," she said. He wiped sweat from his forehead. I don't mind, he replied. You should, she said gently. You're still young. He looked at her sharply. I'm not a child. I didn't say you were. But you think it, he said. She shook her head. No, I think you are strong and kind, but you're also 18. And the world is not gentle with boys your age. He stepped closer. The world has never been gentle with me. But you are. The air shifted between them. He stopped himself before saying more. He turned and grabbed the tools, pretending to be busy. But Martha felt the unspoken words hanging in the air. Later, as they took a break under the porch, Charles finally asked the question she feared. Why do they hate me so much? She closed her eyes for a moment. They don't hate you, she said. They fear what they don't understand. Do you understand? He asked. She hesitated. Yes, she whispered. He exhaled slowly, as if her answer eased some invisible wound. That night, as crickets filled the darkness with faint music, Charles stayed later than usual. He helped her bring in the last of the laundry. He fixed a lantern that had stopped working. He swept the kitchen floor. His movements were calm, almost gentle. When he finally walked to the door, he paused with his hand on the frame. Martha, he said quietly, do you want me to stop coming? Her heart stumbled. No, she said. I don't. He nodded. Relief washed across his face. He stepped out into the night. Moonlight washed over him as he walked down the path. Martha watched until he disappeared. The next day, rumors twisted into something harsher. The councilman questioned why Charles spent so much time at her house. He warned her in a patronizing tone. People are concerned. It would be better if the boy helped other families too. Martha nodded, but said nothing. She knew the truth. They were not concerned. They were curious, jealous, suspicious, anything except compassionate. Charles arrived shortly after the councilman left. Martha felt her breath settle the moment she saw him. She told him nothing about the conversation. She did not want to burden him, but he sensed something in her posture. Did something happen? He asked. No, she said. Nothing that matters. He studied her face. He didn't believe her, but he did not push. They continued with their tasks. They carried logs from the shed. They cleaned the storage room. They cooked a simple meal. The rhythm of their day was steady, almost peaceful. But in the late afternoon, Greta came to the gate. Her tone was sharp. Her chin held high. Martha, she called loudly. I need a word. Martha stepped outside, closing the door behind her. Charles watched from the window. Greta folded her arms. This is becoming shameful, she said. The boy is always here. People talk. They worry. Martha stiffened. They shouldn't worry, she said. They do, Greta replied. And they say things you won't like. Martha held her ground. Let them say what they want. Greta leaned closer. Then don't be surprised when the council makes a decision. Martha's jaw tightened. Greta nodded with satisfaction and walked away. Martha stood still for a long time. Her breath trembled. She returned inside. What did she want? Charles asked. Nothing, Martha said. Just noise. He stepped closer. They're trying to separate us, he said. She did not answer. I won't let them, he continued. You can't fight a whole village, she said. If it's for you, he replied, I can. Her breath caught. She turned away, unsure what to do with his words. As evening approached, the world outside the windows turned gold. Martha sat by the table, lost in thought. Charles stood in the doorway, waiting for her to look at him. When she finally met his eyes, something honest passed between them. Why do you care so much? She asked. He answered without hesitation. Because you're the only person who has ever cared about me. Silence filled the room. Not heavy, not tense, deep. He stepped closer. Not too close. Not imposing. Just enough. You make me feel seen, he said. Like I matter. Martha felt a warmth spread through her chest. A warmth she had not felt in decades. You do matter, she said softly. He swallowed. His voice lowered. Then let me stay. No matter what they say. She looked at him, and for the first time, she stopped trying to deny what was forming between them. Not desire, not confusion, something deeper, something that grew slowly, like a stubborn root breaking through stone. You can stay, she whispered. He closed his eyes, relieved. A quiet bond formed that night. stronger than gossip, stronger than fear. And though the village did not know it yet, the storm brewing inside their hearts would soon become impossible to ignore. The first signs appeared on a quiet morning, weeks after the last big argument in the village. Martha woke earlier than usual. The sky outside her window glowed with a pale blue light. Birds called to each other in soft echoes. The world seemed calm, but her body felt different. Heavy, slow, unbalanced. She sat up and placed her hand on her stomach. Something felt strange. Not painful, just unfamiliar, as if her body was whispering something she did not want to hear. She ignored it at first. Age brought many discomforts. She convinced herself this was no different. She washed her face. She brushed her hair. She walked outside to check the chickens. But the feeling stayed. Persistent, quiet, present. When Charles arrived with a basket of firewood, she forced a smile. "Good morning," he said. His voice carried its usual warmth. "Good morning," she replied. He studied her face. He noticed everything about her now. "You look tired," he said. "I'm fine," she answered. He did not believe her, but he did not push. They worked in silence. He chopped wood. She tended the garden. Every movement made her breath shorter. Her vision blurred once. She steadied herself against a fence post until the dizziness passed. Finally, when she could not ignore it anymore, she spoke. "Charles," she said, "I need to visit the doctor." He dropped the piece of wood in his hands. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said. "Not hurt, just not well." He stepped toward her, worry tightening his jaw. "Then we go now," he said. "It can wait." "It won't," he insisted. His determination left no space for argument. He helped her into her coat. He guided her to the road. He stayed close without touching her, careful and attentive. The clinic was in the next town, a small building with faded paint and quiet hallways. The doctor, a middle-aged woman who had seen Martha many times before, greeted her with calm professionalism. "What brings you in today?" she asked. Martha hesitated. "Fatigue, dizziness, nausea. Something feels wrong." The doctor nodded. She guided Martha to the examination room. Charles waited outside, pacing slowly. Inside, the doctor took Martha's pulse. She checked her pressure. She asked questions. Martha answered simply. She tried to hide her fear, but the doctor noticed the tension in her shoulders. They ran tests, blood work, routine checks. The doctor listened to her chest, then her abdomen. Her expression slowly changed. "Martha," she said gently, "I need to run one more test." "For what?" "I just need to confirm something." Half an hour later, Martha sat on the examination bed, her hands cold and shaking. The doctor returned with a sheet of paper. She sat down beside Martha. Her eyes were serious, but not unkind. "Martha," she said softly, "you are pregnant." The words did not land at first. They hovered in the air, confused and impossible. Martha stared at the doctor, waiting for her to correct herself. The doctor didn't. "No," Martha whispered. "That cannot be." "I ran the test twice," the doctor said. "There is no mistake." Martha shook her head slowly. "I am 62, she said. "This is not possible." "I know," the doctor replied. "But it is happening." Martha's pulse hammered in her ears. "How far along?" she asked, barely breathing. "A few weeks," the doctor said. "Maybe a little more." Silence pressed against the walls. Martha finally whispered, "Does anyone else know?" "No," the doctor said. "And no one will. This stays private unless you choose otherwise." Martha closed her eyes. A tremor moved through her chest. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. "Yes," the doctor said honestly. "It is high risk, but not hopeless." Martha exhaled shakily. "What should I do?" she asked. "I can guide you," the doctor said. "But you must rest. You must avoid stress. You must avoid heavy work. Rest. Avoid stress." She almost laughed. Her life allowed none of that. "And the father?" the doctor asked carefully. "Does he know?" Martha shook her head. "No, he cannot know. Not yet." The doctor nodded without judgment. "I understand," she said, "but he will need to know soon." Martha stood slowly, gripping the edge of the bed for balance. "Not today," she whispered. "Please." The doctor placed a hand on her arm. "As you wish. But take care. This will not be easy." Martha nodded and left the room, her heart pounding with every step. Outside, Charles rushed to her. "What did she say?" he asked. Martha forced her voice to stay steady. "Nothing serious," she said. "Just exhaustion." His eyes searched hers. "You're lying," he said quietly. "No," she insisted. "I just need rest." He didn't argue, but worry carved deep lines in his expression. They walked home together in silence. The sun was bright, but Martha felt cold. Each step grew heavier. Her mind churned with fear, disbelief, and something else she could not name yet. When they reached her house, Charles helped her inside. "You should sit," he said. "I will," she replied. "Can I make you tea?" he asked. She nodded. He moved with quiet urgency, boiling water, preparing leaves, pouring the drink in her favorite cup. She watched him with a mixture of gratitude and dread. She wondered if he understood anything. He didn't. Not yet. He handed her the tea and sat across from her. "You're not telling me something," he said. She held the cup tightly. "There is nothing to tell," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. His gaze was soft, not accusing. "When you want to talk," he said, "I will listen." She felt tears pressing behind her eyes. She forced them back. "Thank you," she whispered. The next few days were heavy with secret tension. Martha moved slower. She avoided bending. She avoided lifting. She avoided anything that might reveal the truth. Charles noticed every change. He asked questions, but gently. She answered without giving anything away. Rumors continued in the village. People watched more closely now. They saw Martha's exhaustion. They saw Charles' constant attention. They twisted these into cruel stories. But the truth they imagined was nothing compared to the truth Martha carried inside her. One evening, after another long day, she sat on the porch watching the distant hills. The sky burned orange and pink. The air smelled of warm soil. She felt tired, more tired than ever. Charles joined her quietly. "You walk slower today," he said. "I am fine," she replied. "You're not," he said. "Something is wrong." She closed her eyes. "Charles," she whispered. "Please. Not today." He hesitated, then nodded. They sat side by side, listening to the distant call of birds. For a moment, the world felt peaceful, safe, unreal. Then a sharp pain cut through her stomach. Sudden, deep. She gasped and grabbed the armrest. Charles jumped to his feet. "What's wrong?" he asked, panic rising in his voice. "I just need to breathe," she said, forcing calm. He knelt beside her. "Martha, tell me the truth," he pleaded. "Please." She met his eyes. She saw fear, concern, devotion, and something stronger than all of it. She could not lie anymore. "Charles," she whispered, "I am pregnant." Silence hit like a cold wave. Charles froze. His breath caught. His eyes widened, filling with shock and disbelief. "Pregnant?" he repeated, barely audible. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. His voice cracked. "How? How is that possible?" "I don't know," she said, but the doctor confirmed it. He sat back, stunned. His hands trembled. His voice wavered. "And it's mine?" She nodded again. He looked down at the ground. His chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. For a long time, neither of them moved. The world around them felt suspended. The wind paused. The birds fell silent. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Charles spoke. Are you afraid?" "Yes," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "Do you want it?" he asked. Martha looked at him with shaking eyes. "I don't know. I didn't think this could happen." He stood. He paced. He ran his hands through his hair. He stopped. He stepped toward her. "Then we will face it together," he said. She stared at him, stunned. "You don't have to." "Yes," he said firmly. "I do. Because I care. Because you're not alone. Not anymore." His words broke something open inside her. Fear loosened. Hope flickered. She covered her face with her hands and cried quietly. He knelt beside her. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "I will stay." The sun disappeared behind the trees. The world darkened. But inside Martha's heart, something fragile and new began to grow. Not the impossible life inside her body, but the belief that maybe, just maybe, she would not face the impossible alone. The days after Martha revealed the truth felt unreal, as if the world around them had shifted into a slower rhythm. Charles checked on her constantly, but gently, never pushing too hard. Martha moved carefully, always aware of the fragile life growing inside her. Neither spoke openly about the future yet. They were still learning how to breathe in this new reality. The village, however, continued its endless rhythm of suspicion. People watched them more closely than ever. They saw Charles walking beside her. They saw how often he came to her home. They saw her growing fatigue. Their minds filled in the gaps with lies of their own making. But none of them knew the truth. And the truth would have shaken them far more than the rumors already spreading across their small world. One morning, as Martha swept the porch, a group of villagers walked past her gate. Their voices were not hushed. They wanted her to hear. She shouldn't be doing heavy work at her age, one said. She shouldn't have a boy around all day either, another replied. It isn't right, a third whispered, loud enough for her to catch. Martha kept sweeping. Her breath tightened in her chest. She refused to look up. She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her react. Charles arrived minutes later. He saw the tension in her posture even before she spoke. What happened? He asked. People happened, she said. He frowned. What did they say? Nothing new, she replied. But louder. He clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout. He wanted to defend her. But she placed a hand on his arm. No fights, she said softly. No anger. That will only make things worse. He nodded reluctantly, but the frustration stayed under his skin like a buried flame. Inside the house, Charles began preparing breakfast. Martha sat at the table, resting her hands on her stomach. Every morning the disbelief returned. She was carrying life again, a life she never expected, a life she wasn't sure she was strong enough to protect. Charles placed a plate in front of her. You need to eat more, he said. Doctor said you need strength. She smiled faintly. You quote her more than I do. I listen more than you do, he replied. She looked at him, surprised by the confidence in his tone. He had grown bolder lately, more certain. The shock had passed, replaced by something stronger. Responsibility, purpose, determination. He sat beside her. We need a plan, he said. For what? For everything, he replied. Martha took a breath. Not yet, she said. It's too early. It isn't, he said. We need to be ready. She shook her head slightly. Well, face things when they come. I want to face them now, he insisted. His voice held no anger, only fear. She softened. We will, she said, but step by step. He nodded, though she could tell he wanted more certainty than she could offer. Later that day, Martha walked slowly to the garden. Charles followed, staying close without hovering. She tried to pull a stubborn weed, but pain tightened in her stomach. She winced and straightened. Stop, he said immediately. He'll do it. She stepped back, frustrated with herself. I used to be able to do everything, she muttered. You're still strong, he said. Not like before. He looked at her with a tenderness that almost broke her. Strength changes, he said, but it doesn't disappear. She lowered her eyes. Charles, she said softly. This child, this situation, it will bring trouble. He stood, wiping soil from his hands. I don't care. You should. No, he said. Not about what they think. She exhaled. It's not just them, she said. It's the council. It's the doctor. It's my age. It's everything. He stepped closer. Then let me carry the heavy parts. She looked up at him. His face was young, but his eyes held a strength far older than his years. You shouldn't have to, she whispered. I want it, he replied. That night, the village held a council meeting. Martha did not attend. Charles didn't either, but voices carried across the small square. People spoke loudly. Too loudly. She needs to be watched, one man said. It isn't normal, another argued. The boy is too young to be involved, someone else added. A woman muttered, they should separate them. Martha heard all of it from a distance. The words pierced deeper than she expected. She closed her door and sat by the window, staring at the dark silhouettes of the trees. When Charles returned from gathering water, he saw her silhouette in the dim candlelight. What's wrong? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she spoke. They want to take you away. His face hardened instantly. No, it might not be up to us. He stepped toward her. I'm not leaving. You may have no choice. He shook his head with fierce determination. They will not control my life. Charles, she said, they can move you to another house. Or another village. They can end your assignment early. You know they can. He paced the room, anger rising in him like a slow storm. They'll refuse. They won't let you refuse. Then he'll run. She gasped. No, don't say that. I will, he said. You want, she replied. He stopped. Martha, I won't let them separate us. She stood, slowly, steadying herself on the table. Charles, she said gently, you can't fight the whole village. He stepped closer, his voice lowered. I would. She felt her heart tighten. Don't, she whispered. Please. His face softened. He reached out but stopped short of touching her. I just don't want you alone in this. I'm not alone, she said. I have you. He swallowed, relief crossing his features. Good, he whispered. But the unease between them lingered through the night. The next morning, the doctor arrived unexpectedly. She knocked firmly, her expression serious. Martha, she said, we need to talk. Charles stood behind Martha, tense. The doctor stepped inside. I reviewed your results again, she said. You must be extremely careful. Any stress could complicate things. Martha nodded. I understand. And you, the doctor said, turning to Charles, must help her with everything. I already do, he said. She studied him for a moment. And you must avoid conflict, she said. If the village becomes hostile, it will affect her health. Charles lowered his gaze. Well managed, he said. The doctor looked at Martha with quiet concern. You need to decide who you trust, she said. People will talk. People will judge. But your health comes first. After she left, Martha sat down with a sigh. Are you afraid? Charles asked. Yes, she said honestly. Of what? Of losing this child, she said. Of losing you. Of losing everything. He knelt beside her. You won't lose me, he said. You can't promise that, she replied. I can, he insisted. She touched his shoulder lightly. You're young, she said. They can move you with a single order. He shook his head. They won't. How do you know? They'll refuse whatever they say, he replied. She paused. And if they threaten you, then I'll still refuse. His voice did not tremble. Martha looked at him, seeing someone different from the boy who had first arrived at her door. He had changed, grown, hardened, not by anger, but by purpose. You're willing to throw your future away, she whispered. No, he said, in building a new one. She felt tears rising, but she blinked them back. That evening, as they sat in the dim light of the kitchen, Charles spoke again. I need to tell them, he said. No, she replied immediately. Not yet. They'll find out. And when they do, she said, you will be the one they blame. He shook his head. I won't let them shame you. They already do, she said. He clenched his fists. Then we tell our truth before they twist it. Our truth? She echoed. He nodded. You're pregnant, he said, his voice steady. And I'm the father. The words hung in the air like a weight made of fire. She exhaled slowly. No, she said. Not yet. They will destroy you. I don't care. You should, she said. You have a whole life ahead of you. I want that life to be with you, he said. Her breath caught. Charles. But he did not back down. I'm not afraid, he said quietly. I am, she whispered. He reached out and held the back of the chair near her, steadying himself. Then it'll be your strength, he said, until you're not afraid anymore. She looked into his eyes and saw something unshakable, something she had never seen in anyone before, not even in the man she once loved. Loyalty, the kind that did not break under pressure, the kind that stood firm when the world tried to crush it. Outside, the wind blew through the trees. The sky darkened. Clouds gathered again, heavy and threatening. Another storm was coming, not from the sky, from the village, and they both knew it. But for the first time, Martha did not feel alone. She felt scared. She felt fragile. But she was not alone, and that made all the difference. The final weeks of the pregnancy arrived like a slow wave rising from the horizon. Martha felt every change more sharply now. Her steps were shorter. Her breath tightened faster. Her nights grew restless. The world felt heavier, but also strangely brighter, as if every sunrise carried a quiet message. Hold on a little longer. Charles stayed close every day. He worked quietly, constantly, without complaint. He brought food. He fetched water. He checked the path. He washed clothes. He made small repairs. He tried to shield her from every concern, even the smallest ones. But he couldn't shield her from the whispers. The village was tense, almost hostile. People watched them openly now, not hiding, not pretending. Their faces twisted with confusion, judgment, fear, and disgust. Rumors had grown past anything logical. They whispered about sin, shame, scandal, curses, punishment. They filled the air with poison. But no one knew the truth. And the truth was heavier than all their lies combined. One cold morning, Martha woke with pain in her lower stomach. Sharp, deep, not unbearable, but unmistakable. She placed a hand over her belly. The movement inside was gentler than before. Slower. She felt fear crawl beneath her ribs. Charles entered the room with a tray of breakfast and froze. "You're in pain," he said. "I'm fine," she replied. "No, you're not," he said. She tried to stand, but the pain returned stronger. She grabbed the edge of the table. Charles rushed to her side. "It's time," he whispered, terrified. "No," she said. "Not yet." He looked at her belly. "I think it is," he said. Another wave of pain cut through her. She closed her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Get the doctor. Now." Charles ran faster than he ever had in his life. He tore through the village, ignoring stares, ignoring voices calling after him. When he reached the doctor's home, he pounded on the door with shaking fists. "It's Martha," he said. "Please, hurry." The doctor grabbed her bag and followed him at once. When they reached the house, Martha was seated in a chair, breathing slowly, gripping the arms tightly. The doctor knelt beside her. "How long?" she asked. "Since morning," Martha said. The doctor looked at Charles. "You need to heat water. Bring towels. Light the fire higher. Close all windows." He obeyed instantly. The doctor examined Martha with gentle, practiced hands. Her expression grew serious. "You're early," she said, "but it's happening. We cannot stop it." Martha nodded. Her voice trembled. "Will they be all right?" "I don't know," the doctor said honestly, "but I will do everything I can." Charles stood by the doorway, pale, frozen, gripping the frame as if the house would collapse without his support. The doctor turned to him. "You need to stay calm," she said. "Do exactly what I ask." He nodded quickly. "Yes, anything." Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Pain washed over Martha in waves. The doctor guided her, instructed her, soothed her. Charles brought water. He wiped her forehead. He whispered encouragement when her strength faltered. Outside, the village gathered. People whispered. People speculated. Some prayed. Some judged. Some waited with cold fascination. They knew something was happening. They knew it was happening inside Martha's house. But none of them dared step closer. Fear built walls between them and the truth. Inside, time moved differently. Pain, breath, silence, fear. Everything grew sharper, louder, heavier. At sunset, Martha's strength waned. Her face grew pale. Sweat covered her forehead. Her breathing became shallow. The doctor's voice grew low and urgent. "Martha," she said softly, "you must push now." Martha closed her eyes. "I can't," she whispered. "You can," the doctor said. "You must." Charles moved closer. He knelt by her side, his voice shaking. "You can do this," he whispered. "Please, don't stop now." "Not now." Martha took a deep breath. She pushed. Pain tore through her like fire. The world blurred. She gasped. The doctor encouraged her. Charles held her hand. Minutes felt like hours. Then suddenly, a cry. Small, weak, real. The doctor lifted a tiny baby into the air. A boy, his voice fragile but alive. Martha cried out, not from pain, but from relief. The doctor wrapped him quickly. "One more," she said urgently. "Martha, you're not done." Martha nodded weakly. Her strength was almost gone, but she pushed again. Her breath shattered. Her vision darkened. And then another cry. A girl. Smaller. Softer. But alive. The doctor wrapped her too. Martha collapsed back against the pillows, trembling. Tears soaked her face. Charles stared at the babies with wide, terrified, awestruck eyes. He seemed frozen between wonder and dread. The doctor placed the boy in his arms. "Hold him," she said. His hand shook violently. "I don't know how," he whispered. "You'll learn," the doctor said. When she placed the girl in Martha's arms, something inside the room shifted. Something quiet. Something holy. Martha held the tiny body against her chest. The baby's heartbeat flickered against her skin. She's so small," Martha whispered. "But strong," the doctor said. Charles stepped closer, looking from one child to the other. His voice broke. "They're ours," he whispered. "They're really ours." Martha nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "They are." Outside, the atmosphere changed. The cries had reached the crowd. People looked at each other in shock. Some stepped back. Some stepped forward. But for the first time all summer, the gossip stopped. Completely. Utterly. Silence spread through the village like a falling curtain. Because no rumor had prepared them for this. No whisper had dared suggest the impossible. No judgment had imagined the truth. A 62-year-old woman had given birth. Not to one child, but to two. The doctor soon stepped outside, exhausted. "She's alive," she said. "And the babies too." A collective gasp moved through the crowd. Someone whispered, "It's a miracle." Another muttered, "It's unnatural." But no one left. They stood frozen, trapped between faith and fear. Inside, Charles sat beside Martha on the bed. The girl lay against Martha's chest. The boy rested in Charles' arms. His breathing was soft. His eyes were closed. His tiny fingers curled around the fabric of Charles' shirt. Charles looked at Martha. "I won't leave you," he said. She rested her hand on his wrist. "I know." He looked down at the babies again, wonder filling his features. "What do we name them?" he whispered. Martha smiled weakly. "You choose the boy," she said. Charles swallowed. "They'll name him Gabriel," he said, "because he came like a message. Unexpected, but meant for us." She nodded. "And a girl?" he asked. Martha looked at the fragile little face pressed against her chest. "Hope," she whispered, "because without hope none of this would have happened." He nodded again, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Gabriel. Hope." Two names that felt like soft light in a dark room. The doctor entered again. "They need rest." "You all do," she said. Charles looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. She shook her head. "You two did the hard part." Night fell. The villagers slowly dispersed, stunned and speechless. For the first time, their voices held no judgment, only disbelief. And maybe, for the first time in months, Martha's house felt protected by something stronger than gossip. Inside, the candles dimmed. The air grew warm and still. Martha drifted into exhausted sleep with a baby on her chest. Charles remained awake. He watched over them. Every breath, every tiny movement, every fragile moment. He placed his hand gently on Martha's arm and whispered, "I will protect you, all three of you, no matter what comes next." And for the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged, like he had a real family, a real purpose, a real home. Outside, the village remained silent. Inside, a new life began, and the world, for once, felt gentle.